Since Russia and Syria halted airstrikes in Aleppo more than 24 hours ago now, 9 people have been killed and dozens more wounded in that province. The first attack on civilians came from the rebel-held part of the city. Murad Ghazdiev witnessed the aftermath and spoke to survivors.
Well, the Russians and the Syrians stopped all airstrikes. The rebels did not stop bombing western Aleppo. All day today, every 20, 30 minutes, we heard explosions from mortar shells, from homemade gas canister bombs. The Russian military detected 51 violations, and we went to the hospital to see the aftermath for ourselves.
A shell fell next to my car. I tried to drive away as fast as possible. I grabbed my daughter, placed her on the front seat. I hesitated for a moment and heard another shell. A person near me died immediately. I was wounded. There are villainous people. This district is often shelled, although it used to be one of the safest. Many people live here. People go shopping, there's a big market here and a residential district nearby, and that's why this place is a target.
Rebel shells have kept falling on western Aleppo. One found its way into a packed street in the Al-Jamaliya neighborhood. The aftermath you can see behind me. 3 people now confirmed dead. A number of children, a number of adults injured as well. Distraught, grieving and angry relatives packed the hallways. Torn clothes and pools of blood are something you see every day at this Aleppo hospital.
At about 5:15, 5 mortar shells fell in the area of Al-Jamil, resulting in 28 people being taken to the Ghazi clinic, where 3 died. Now, 2 severely wounded people are in intensive care and 3 victims with injuries to the head, chest and jaw. Among the injured are 3 children with injuries of moderate severity.
There is no sense or pattern to rebel shelling. Shells can fall anywhere, at any time. Civilian areas, military areas, there doesn't seem to be any distinction that the rebels are making.
Meantime, in a separate incident, 6 more people have been killed and 4 wounded in an airstrike just outside the city. According to a statement from the UN-backed Russian Center for Reconciliation in Syria, 2 residential buildings were destroyed in the village of Hasajek. Neither Russian nor Syrian military planes were in that area, but air control systems did detect 2 F-16 fighter jets belonging to the Belgian Air Force in the area at the time.
We're expecting statements from the US State Department that would strongly condemn the attacks on civilian facilities and the killing of civilians. I think it would be no trouble to find the images of the killed to launch the respective campaign on CNN.
We have to ask ourselves what the Kingdom of Belgium is doing bombing Syria. And Belgium is one of 13 countries involved in the U.S.-orchestrated effort to destroy Syria, to impose regime change. Belgium is the headquarters of NATO, one of the oldest, longest NATO members, and so this bombing is very much part of the U.S. war on Syria, the U.S. determination, its effort to overturn the government of Syria, and it has, in every way, it's destructive to the people of Syria. It was not requested. Certainly Syria did not request that the Kingdom of Belgium bomb Aleppo or any other part of Syria.
They are all innocent children, and they are all a loss to Syria.
I was an Army officer. I was a psychological operations analyst, counterterrorism. I had a top secret clearance. I was in the Bush administration from 2003 to 2008. I worked at the State Department as a counterterrorism analyst. Benghazi was not an Egyptian filmmaker issue. It was bad guys that we were employing that were coming in from various sources to usurp and destabilize and kick out of power Muammar Gaddafi. And they were being funded through a lot of Swiss banks and European banks and other banks. But we were funding bad guys. It's just coming out now. So Hillary Clinton, when she gets up and gives all her lies, well, we know that the horse is the same color. There's money that Swiss banks have been paying to bad guys in the Middle East, ISIS now, that we've known about since 2012, and we have not shut it down. Now this is interesting too, and you can't make this up. UBS and HSBC are all known for terrorist financing. They prosecuted Birkenfeld, the Swiss banker, who came to them and said, I've got all this terrorist financing information, money laundering information, Lanny Breuer and Eric Holder working with Hillary Clinton, because Brad showed me State Department cables, and I said, Brad, I was at the State Department when these cables were written. I was in the middle of it. So Lanny Breuer and Eric Holder and Hillary Clinton, in her power as Secretary of State, conspired to prosecute Birkenfeld, hide his information, and threw him in jail.
They should never finance ISIL or ISIS or any terrorist organization.
Or we did, and Hillary did. Or we did, and Hillary did. And Hillary did.
I wouldn't say that that was the purpose of the program. The purpose of the program was to arm the moderates.
Can you tell us what the total number of trained fighters remains?
We're talking four or five.
Al-Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province.
So, I mean, that is the land of unconfirmed. We came, we saw, he died. She's just a devil woman with evil on her mind. Beware the devil woman, she's gonna get you. She's just a devil woman with evil on her mind. Beware the devil woman, she's gonna get you from behind.
So we helped build ISIS. Now there's a danger there. Weapons from Benghazi ended up in the hands of ISIS. So we helped build ISIS.
General Dempsey, on the eve of airstrikes against Syria, went to the White House and said the military from the brass on down are not going to be al-Qaeda's Air Force. And we saw Senator Ted Cruz go public. We saw Senator Rand Paul go public and make similar statements that our military and our people do not want to be al-Qaeda's Air Force. Turkey and other countries funding ISIS and al-Qaeda and al-Nusra, and the West giving them weapons, tow missiles, Stinger missiles, you name it, Hillary Clinton namely. Benghazi was just one part of that. It's ongoing. We've known this. We've had CIA whistleblowers on, like Tosh Plumlee. We've had Colonel Schaefer on to talk about it. And so then the State Department separately, just as Tosh Plumlee exposed 3 years ago, has to use its import-export power to order weapons transfers that's even above the Pentagon and the CIA. The military don't want to arm al-Qaeda to murder every Christian group. They understand this is directly against America's interest, and it's a war crime. Why is she allowed to blame Donald Trump for ISIS when out of everybody that's involved in this, she, as the head of the State Department, literally quarterbacked the operation?
What difference at this point does it make?
Hirsch's military on military. He points out about military resistance to our government's policies in terms of arming and equipping ISIS. He says that resistance dates back to the summer of 2013. It comes from Defense Intelligence Agency, Joint Chiefs of Staff, then General Martin Dempsey, all talked about how the fall of the Assad regime would lead to chaos and potentially to serious takeover by jihadis. They say they had an all-source appraisal. That means that it was coming from signals intelligence, from satellite intelligence, from human intelligence, pointing out that there was a covert U.S. program to arm and support the moderate rebels fighting Assad. It had been co-opted by Turkey. It had morphed into an across-the-board technical arms and logistical program for all of the opposition, including al-Nusra and the Islamic State, ISIS. The so-called moderates, he says, had evaporated, and the Free Syrian Army was nothing but a rump group stationed at an air base in Turkey. He said the assessment was bleak. There was no viable moderate opposition to Assad, and the U.S. was arming extremists.